Horizon Jazz Reacts, and this is the French Revolution, Oversimplified Part 1 of the channel Oversimplified. Yes, the French Revolution, off with their heads. Yeah, that's going to be a massive trend here. By the end of this, I guess in the second part probably, people are going to lose their head left and right. Some neighbor doesn't like what his neighbor is doing, so they'll just say he's some kind of a traitor or whatever. Just saying that is enough, like we can't take any chances, so off with their head. Guillotine became a way too easy thing. Everybody was going to the guillotine. I can't imagine living in that period. I mean, everybody just thought, imagine. Now you can't really imagine the fear, the, paranoia constantly, right? The tension, because it's a revolution, no stable government is there yet because you just overthrew the monarchy. It's really effed up time, basically. So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, do not forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react tomorrow. If you want to react to any other, I guess, video from this channel or any other, comment down. Check out other reaction I did. There's a playlist I wrote for it, like OverSimplified reaction in the card, internet student, OverSimplified production, history, CGP Gray. Yeah, this was one.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Get protected by clicking the link below and get an amazing 75% off. That's only $2.99 per month with an additional month free for a limited time. Also, new French Revolution merch available now in the store, including King Louis and Marie Antoinette character pins, complete with detachable heads, just like the real thing. So I said to the Marquis de Lafayette, "What do you think I am? Some dirty peasant? I've never worked a day in my life." Wow, that Marie Antoinette sure is pretty. Sure is. Wouldn't want to be Prince Louis though. That's going to be a lot of responsibility when he becomes king, especially since France is in financial ruin.
Yeah, okay. The entire society is fucked, basically. If the upper class and people in power basically thinks the working is the apparently lower class. We were made to just enjoy our life. That's going downhill.
Right. Thank you one and all for attending the royal marriage of my grandson, the future King of France, to the Archduchess of Austria. Now for the very awkward yet historically accurate part of the ceremony, where we all watch them get into bed together. All right, now that's out of the way, let's leave the royal couple to it. You better give us an heir, you fat, ill-bred boy. Nighty-night. That's going to be a lot of responsibility. France is in financial ruin. You fat, ill-bred boy. Quite. That's going to be a lot of responsibility. France is in financial ruin. You fat, ill-bred boy. That's going to be a lot of responsibility. Oh, great. He's a freaking weirdo.
Damn.
France, the most prosperous, cultured, and beautiful.
Yeah, it's like this, pressure works different way for everybody, right? Some of the people gets molded by the pressure, but the molded result is usually effed up. A conqueror, killer, whatever, goes to the cities, probably conquer places, become somewhat great, in the history, like he's a guy who conquered places. But in the end, what it means that he went to the places, killed people, pillaged people. That's usually what results in. Rarely there's a good king comes out of it if the person is that level stable. Like after all this pressure, the guy doesn't broke somewhat psychologically, but he sees the societal problem and thinks, I'm going to fix that. Rarely that happens. But usually things like this happens too, because the kid is not that strong psychologically in every way. Usually that's how the kids are. So, most time this would happen. That all the pressure, like, oh holy shit, I'm supposed to run the entire country. Countries in ruins. There are lots of expectation for me. People usually break, right? Go under depression. So either it's some kind of a horrible conqueror who kills people, pillages places, or someone who just gets break like that.
Nation in the world, as it had been
for
centuries. An exquisite social culture, with the king and the upper classes throwing crazy parties every night, enjoying high living and fine dining. Who cares that they were only able to do so off the backs of the hard-working, starving poor? What are they gonna do? Revolt? They're only 80% of the population. No. Life in France is great.
They were really French of the time, right?
You want to go to war with Britain and increase your power? Go for it, little buddy. You do you. And you lost. Now you're in severe financial debt. We have no money. What do we do? Should we stop partying? Heck no. Party harder. That's okay. The peasantry will pick up the slack. They were created by God to do all the work, and you were created to reap all the benefits and party hard. That's just how society works, and we've all just accepted it for centuries. Why? Why what? Why do the nobility get to be all rich and stuff? Just because they were born into it? And the rest of us schmucks just have to accept that? Hell, why do we even need a king? Who decided that? It all just seems very unfair and unequal, and I, for one, am starting to question it. Wow, that's very enlightened of you. And so began the Age of Enlightenment. Great philosophical thinkers across France and beyond began to question whether this beautiful nation was really all that beautiful after all. Hey Prince Louis, bad news. Your grandpa died of smallpox this morning, which means good news, you're now the king. So just to sum up, France is in severe financial debt, and the angry populace are beginning to question how necessary you are. But hey, I believe in you, champ. You got this. Maybe. Oh no! Prince Louis Capet became King Louis XVI in May 1774. He was a notoriously weak man, and he knew it. He barely had the wisdom to rule a nation, never mind one in crisis, and he was easily manipulated by those around him. One of his first acts was to try to get revenge on the British by financing their American colony's revolution. Hey, we're an independent nation now. That was real swell of you, Louis. Couldn't have done it without you. Glad I could help. So hey, about all that money we lent you, when can we get that back? Yep, you're a great guy. I'll never forget what you've done for us. Real glad I could help, friend, but about that money, gotta go now, chum. Best of luck to you. Oh no! And now France was in even more debt. France's poor, suffering under the strain of economic ruin, watched as the nobility continued to live as though nothing was wrong. In particular, they grew increasingly disdainful of the Queen, Marie Antoinette, as she continued to spend all of France's money on her own luxurious lifestyle and fashion. While the peasants were breaking their backs in the fields, she was walking around like, hey, my hair is a boat. I'm not making that up. Her hair really was a boat.
How do you even do that shit?
My hair is a boat.
Wait a second.
I'm not making that up.
What? That's just... Ah, come on, that can't be real, right? How the hell do you do that?
Her hair really was a boat, and her lavish spending earned her the nickname Madame Deficit. And speaking of the Queen, there was also a long-standing scandal around the fact that the king took a very long time to boink her, and the working classes of Paris began ridiculing the royal couple with lewd pamphlets depicting the Queen as a court thought, and the king as a wuss, unable to fulfill his marital duty. Respect for the monarchy was at an all-time low, as France's finances were spiraling out of control, and the king and his aides really only had one solution to the crisis: tax the poor. Tax the poor. We could do a sexy calendar shoot. Tax the poor. And so it was. The poor, who were already struggling to...
Look, here's what I'm thinking, right? Even today, even with the democracies, with presidents and prime minister at their helm, they can't do everything by them, right? People around them has to be helpful. If a certain party that just came into power, if they were to be successful, president alone, prime minister alone cannot do shit, right? The people around them have to be helpful somewhat. So, I can't blame the guy here for fucking things up, since people around him are not giving him good advice, right? They're just finding what they want and doing that rather than what would help. So this was just effed up from the start. The guy already is like the start of the video showed, the guy is already under pressure a lot. So, he's already, is already ineffective in a way because of that. Under pressure, he's basically became somewhat depressed, right? Constantly on the pressure, like, how am I going to rule the entire country and this and that? And the people around him is not really helping. So obviously, French Revolution was inevitable from this point.
To make ends meet, found themselves being taxed from every direction. Hey, I'm the royal tax collector. Looks like you've yet to pay your income tax, head tax. By the way, how many windows you got in that house of yours? 3? Oof, yep, there's gonna be a tax for that. Hey, your local priest here, have you paid your church tithe yet? Well, at least this one is going to the good work of God. Sure.
Yeah.
God. I think this year, God wants me to buy a new swimming pool. Hey, private tax collector here. Oh, and I brought some goons with me. Just a few quick questions. How much salt did you buy this year? About 7 kilos, I think? Yep, okay, there's gonna be a tax for that. Oh, what's that over there? And that's extra salt I held over from last year, so I wouldn't have to buy as much this year. Oh, yeah, there's a tax for that. And what are you doing with all this salt? Well, obviously cooking. On the table. Yep, and preserving fish and meat. Oh no. Yep, and there's a tax for that. Hey, how old is he? He's 9. And so he's purchased his required amount of salt for this year, right? What? No, he's 9. Uh-oh. Sorry, little Timmy. Looks like I'm gonna have to tax you for that. Yep, salty. There's gonna be a tax for that. And that's not all. A huge portion of the peasants' harvest had to be given up. And there was also the labor tax, where peasants were required to work a certain number of days for their local lord without pay. Obviously, people weren't...
So let me get this straight. French basically helped American, became free of British, right? During that, their economy kind of tanked. After that, every commoner around the country is basically pissed on how the royalty and noblemen are working. At that point, they thought it's great thing to do is basically tax everybody for everything. Yeah, that will definitely not, reach a breaking point. The pressure will not rise at the point where they will basically kill everyone and send everyone to guillotine. French Revolution definitely is not going to happen.
Weren't too happy with these taxation policies, and the aggressive nature of these private tax farmers sometimes even escalated to violence. In particular, though, the people really hated how inconsistent the taxation rules were across the nation, and also the fact that the first two estates often had to pay very little, if any, tax at all. And so, the anger continued to grow. France had a population that was just about ready to explode. What could push them over the edge? How about a touch of natural disaster? A series of harsh summers and winters left the peasants' harvests in ruin.
That would do it.
They had no food or money, and the cost of bread skyrocketed. Of course, the upper classes had massive stocks of grain and wheat, so they were virtually untouched by this new crisis. But now the poor really were starving, and they began to riot. Women took to the streets. Bakeries were raided, and bakers suspected of keeping bread for themselves were sometimes even hanged. Wow,
What?
This is really getting out of control. Your Majesty, we need some decisive action. You need to step up.
Bakers are not noblemen, they're commoners as well, trying to get by. What the fuck? Bakers got the worst end of it.
And lead us. What will you do? Okay, I've got this. I know. I'll summon the Estates General, and they'll decide what to do.
Yeah.
You really are a fat, ill-bred boy.
Yep.
The Estates General was the closest thing France had to a government, apart from the king. It was a purely advisory body, and was rarely summoned. In fact, it hadn't been summoned for 175 years prior to this. But with France in a severe crisis...
Yeah, let's call all the rich fucks, right? All the upper classes who look down on all the commoners, and they'll decide what to do with this. Yeah, what they're going to do. They're not going to give up their luxury, basically. They're just going to, enforce more harsh things on the common people so they reach even more breaking point. Yeah.
The king felt the time was right to call on the government to help. The Estates General was made up of representatives from the three estates. That is, the clergy, the nobility, and everybody else. Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. The first order of business is regarding the clergy and nobility. You all get brand new Porsches. You get a Porsche, and you get a Porsche, and you get a Porsche. Everybody gets a Porsche. And now into the second order of business. France is completely out of money. Like, it's never been this bad before. Anyone got any ideas? How about we all get Lamborghinis next time? The king decided that in order to make a decision, they had to come up with a voting system. Okay, the clergy. You have a population of 130,000, so you'll get 1 vote. The nobility. You have a population of 350,000, so you'll also get 1 vote. And the third estate. You have a population of 27 million people and make up 98% of the population. Very impressive. You'll get 1 vote. The third estate were obviously pretty unhappy with this system because they kept on finding that this would happen. We propose to raise taxes on the third estate. All in favor? All opposed? 2 to 1. Taxes will be raised on the third estate. We propose a motion that says the first 2 estates are a bunch of poo-poo heads. All in favor? All opposed? 2 to 1. It's official. We are not poo-poo heads. The third estate realized that any attempt at reform would be outvoted by the 2 upper estates, and they thought that was kind of lame. So they decided that since they were 98% of the population, they could go off to form their own government, make their own laws, and take over the running of the country. And so, the National Assembly was born. The third estate was now in control, and there was nothing the king could do to stop. Ha! I've locked you all out of your building. What are you gonna do about it? We'll probably go find a different building that isn't locked. Oh, no! The National Assembly did find another unlocked building, just down the road, an indoor tennis court, where on the 20th of June 1789, they all took the tennis court oath, pledging to continue meeting until the king finally gave in to their demands for more equality and economic reform. This new National Assembly included many of the most educated members of the Third Estate, including two young lawyers by the names of Maximilien Robespierre and Georges Danton.
Damn, so every time you look at the history, this is how it's done, right? Maybe not at this extreme level, but still. In here, the king and all that government, basically noblemen, clergies, whatever, were really next level stupid, right? 98% of population is common people, so we'll give them one vote. Everybody else, they're just few 100,000, will get one vote too. So that level of difference, right? And in that, because of the war about independence of America, where France basically helped them, that basically pushed them even more into a financial crisis. After that, somewhat of a seasons ruined their food. Basically, real food sort of started. Noblemen, everybody just living a lavish life, where commoners are suffering. So they thought, fuck it, let's impose more taxes, because that's what you do when tensions are rising. Then create this assembly in that make sure that 98% of the people just get one vote and everybody else gets a total of 2 votes. Yeah, that would do it. This is really stupid, right? At the time, probably it became such a common thing that, oh, this is how the living life is, right? Noblemen should live like noblemen. Clergy should live like clergy. We should live in lavish life. Our commoners suffer. That became so common that they were not seeing the problem about it. They didn't even thought that there's something like that French Revolution could happen. But obviously, with the hindsight, we see it like this. This was inevitable after all this shit.
Some members of the first two estates even joined their cause. Some of these men formed a radical new political party called the Jacobin Club and quickly became leading figures. While many members of the Third Estate simply wanted more equality, a growing number in this Jacobin faction would begin calling for something even crazier: the removal of the king entirely. And this is where fear began to take hold. With such a volatile situation developing, everyone was afraid of something. The king feared his position was under threat, and he called in the military to take position around Paris. The Third Estate heard rumor of the gathering military force, and they feared the king was planning to round them up and arrest them. Maybe he'd even execute them. It also didn't help that the king had just dismissed France's popular finance minister, who had been trying to make reforms himself. It seemed the king was done negotiating. Fear, left unchecked, often boils over into anger, and anger detonates with violence. The angry people of Paris, after centuries of cruel inequality, harsh oppression, even starvation, fearful of having their new movement for reform demolished so soon, decided that it was now or never to take action. Screw reform. They decided they'd do one better. How about revolution? The people of Paris, believing the French military...
Like I said, after all that happened, right, it's completely understandable that this is the next phase where people will go to.
Preparing to attack, decided they should arm themselves. The National Assembly announced the creation of a bourgeois militia, the National Guard, and immediately, many troops from the French military defected over to the revolutionary side.
Oh shit.
In the early hours of...
Like I've said in the lots of past video, military is also common people, right? When you send military to, take down 98% of people who are basically revolting, some of them are going to be their relatives, cousins, brothers, or whatever. They're not going to shoot them, right? So just sending in the military is not going to work.
July 14th, 1789, a large crowd stormed and raided the Hotel des Invalides, a military hospital where they were able to secure a large number of rifles. The bad news was they weren't able to find any gunpowder for their new weapons. The good news was they knew exactly where to get some. A prison fortress and a symbol of royal tyranny towering over Paris. The Bastille. Mid-morning, the crowd gathered around the Bastille and demanded that the men in
I guess this is where the game starts, right? Assassin's Creed Unity. Oh yeah, I almost forgot the name.
charge, Governor Delaunay, surrender the prison and hand over the gunpowder. Obviously, Governor Delaunay was like, no way. So he stalled for time by inviting a few members of the crowd in for negotiations. The crowd, still waiting outside, quickly became impatient, and before long, they stormed the fortress, taking on the French troops inside. Your Majesty, we've received word that the people have surrounded the Bastille. Governor Delaunay will hold them off. No need to worry. Actually, Your Majesty, it appears the crowd is now headed away from the Bastille. You see? What did I tell you? Clearly, Governor Delaunay has defeated them and has them on the run. No need to worry. Your Majesty, Isn't that Governor Delaunay's
Damn.
head on a pike? Well, clearly, Governor Delaunay has taken on the form of a bodiless pike-head deity, and the people are so enamored with him, they're parading him around the city. No need to worry at all. When the National Assembly heard about the violence that had taken place, they had two options. Either one, they denounce it and try to carry on the revolution using peaceful means, or two, they say, damn, you stuck his head on a pike? That's pretty hardcore. And we love it. Incidentally, they went with option number two. Some historians believe this reaction paved the way for the utter violence and bloodshed that would become the legacy of the French Revolution.
Seriously.
This widespread acceptance of violence during the Revolution is also largely credited to the writings of a certain Jean-Paul Marat, a man of science with a horrible skin condition that kept him confined to a bathtub. He began writing a radical newspaper he affectionately named The Friend of the People. Citizens of France, be very afraid. Given the chance, the king and the nobility won't hesitate to massacre us all. The solution is simple. Execute them. Kill every last one of them. Cut off 1,000 heads, and if that's not enough, cut off 1,000 more. Oh, hey Mr. Squeaky, what are you doing down there? You're so cute. Aw, I love you too, Mr. Squeaky. Mwah. Now where was I? Oh yeah. Kill them all. It became one of the most popular publications in Paris during the Revolution. And
The guy just said what people wanted to hear, right? Because people are already going there. Like, look at that. We killed the governor and that solved all our problems. They probably saw how, all the clergy, noblemen, the king, and everybody's just getting, afraid now. They just saw that first time ever, they are pissing their pants. So that also fueled it. And some guy like this basically wrote this like, yeah, that's about right.
Succeeded in spreading ever-increasing fear and anger among the people. In August, leaders of the National Assembly, with help from a certain Thomas Jefferson, adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, an incredible document that guaranteed liberty and equal rights to all men. And when I say men, I mean men. Despite its glaring shortcomings in gender equality, the massively influential declaration would go on to inspire the struggle for liberty and equality across the planet for centuries. However, back in France, the vast majority of the people weren't really so concerned with enlightened ideas of equality as much as they were concerned with the fact that they were still starving. Bread was still expensive as hell and hard to come by.
Yeah, equality and everything. We'll think about it later. Right now, I'm fucking hungry. That's the base of everything. Let's put food in my stomach first. After, I'll think about all the liberty and everything.
The people felt that one reason nothing had been done yet about the crisis was because the king simply couldn't see the problem. He lived in Versailles, a full 20 kilometers southwest of Paris, and as a result, lived in comfort, separated from his dirty, stinking subjects. On October 5th, a crowd of women, 7,000 strong, decided—
See, that's what I'm thinking. You think that you feel bad for the king since he was just a kid who was afraid before he even came to the power. He was weak in a sense. So you think like he was born into this place. He was in a position from the start where it was impossible. But still, doesn't matter how much afraid he was. He was a king, right? I mean, you can't just escape like he was just a kid who didn't know anything and under pressure he was just weak overall, so he didn't make any good decision. No, he was still a person in power. He could have seen where the things are going. He could have just used his common sense and think, maybe I should live with my people, right? Rather than living in Versailles, maybe I should live in Paris, right? Among the people. Maybe I try to ease some of the issues that people are rather than live completely lavishly. Fine, I can make clergy and noblemen angry, so we'll keep all that, but I'll at least listen to what common people have issue with, right? And ease some of them to make tensions, a bit smaller. But he did none of that shit. He just kept with this, I guess, this French mentality that was, stereotypical thing, that he just lived lavishly, did what his noblemen, everybody was doing, and didn't think anything. Doesn't matter how weak you are or how much you don't know, you at least have somewhat common sense, right? You can see where things are going. So there is a blame, to go around with him, basically.
They'd do something unprecedented. They decided they'd remove that separation and confront the king directly. The women marched all the way to the king's palace in Versailles. Along the way, the crowd continued to grow into the tens of thousands, and when they arrived, they demanded an audience with the king. What are those things outside the palace? They're poor people, Your Majesty. That's poor people? They say they're hungry. Hungry? Then let them eat cake. Wow. See, this is the exact BS that led to this whole mess in the first place. You're so out of touch. They're writhing around in the filth, breaking their back to barely scrape by, and they come to you demanding just the basic ability to feed themselves, and you think a slice of cake will sort them out? Well, then let them eat Taco Bell Crunchwrap Supreme. Wow. They're not that desperate. Members of the crowd actually managed to break into the palace with the intention of killing the queen, who narrowly escaped through a secret passage in her bedroom. The enraged mob killed several members of the royal guard and raised their heads on pikes, which, if you haven't noticed yet, is something they were quite fond of doing.
Yeah.
The king had no choice but to come out and talk to the crowd. He agreed to accept his new position, sharing power with the revolutionary government, and to return to Paris with the crowd, removing the separation between king and subject. King Louis had a problem with people constantly raiding his palace, but one thing he didn't have a problem with was people raiding his computer, because he used NordVPN. If, like me, you don't like hackers stealing your data, password, bank deets, and girlfriend, then you need to check out NordVPN. With over 5,000 servers in 60 countries, it allows you to surf the net anonymously and safely with no personal data logging. It's super easy to use. You can take a trip to a server in Japan with just the click of a button. And while you're there, why not check out some sweet Japanese Netflix? Or maybe you want to watch a certain OverSimplified video that for some reason has been blocked in your country. Well, with NordVPN, you can. NordVPN gives you access to super fast servers and much more. And if you're not happy with it, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get NordVPN now by clicking the link below, nordvpn.com/oversimplified, and get an amazing 75% off. That's only $2.99 per month with an additional month free for a limited time. And you'll also be helping to support my channel. So again, that's nordvpn.com/oversimplified.
Oh, that's it. All right. Damn, French Revolution. Yeah, there hasn't been any other big time revolt or revolution like French Revolution, which was so bloody, right? I mean, it just started. This is not even bloody. By the end, people will be constantly going to the guillotine, right? That became a thing, right? That became a thing of the history. You know, send him to the guillotine. It just became, everybody was just dying, and God knows how many innocents died in that process. Because by the end, it was just all chaos and panic, right? After you know, the killing of the king and queen and everything, it became, you know, place of the people. It became so bad. People, revolutionaries who were the head of all that, became so hungry with the power that everybody was going to the guillotine. Like they became a dictator somewhat, right? And that led to Napoleon rising, basically. Napoleon basically used that to show, see that revolution is not your thing. Look at all the people dead and everything. So basically, whoever Napoleon convinced, you know, to make him the emperor at the time with that meeting, I forgot the name. All those people was convinced because what they see in the revolution. If revolution was not that bloody, probably majority of people would not align with Napoleon. Yeah. Well, people, that was the French Revolution OverSimplified part 1 by the channel OverSimplified. Remember, if you like my reaction, do not forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. You know, comment down if you want to react to any other video. Check out the reaction I did. There's a link in the description with all of my videos. Check out the cards with the different playlists like OverSimplified, Old Sakashik Proxen, History, CGP Grey, Kazakhstan in a nutshell. Yeah, I'll see you next time.